to the Colts, or will it be Ryan Leaf?
With the first pick of the draft, the Indianapolis Colts select quarterback, University of Tennessee, Peyton Manning.
Welcome to the first ever edition of the Climbing the Big Board podcast. I am your host, JR, alongside my co-host, Miles Gorham. Miles, how's everything going?
It's going good, man. I've been excited to get this going, so I can't wait.
Good, and just this podcast, just to give you guys an overview, it's something we've been having planned in the works for a long time now. We can't really get our draft takes off like we want to on the Climbing the Pocket podcast, so we figured why not start something on our own? In the intro, I got a little Travis Scott, Miles. That's my guy.
Yeah.
As far as music is concerned, so who's like that guy you listen to or that artist you listen to before the game or even now that just gets you going?
It's weird because he just gives me I like to calm. Like earlier in the day, I like to stay calm and cool and collected before a game starts. So like a Chance the Rapper is like the perfect like chill mode for me. Like you can get amped up with him at times, but most of the time I like him as like a chill vibe. So I kind of like that. Chance is my guy though. That's probably my go-to for like everything.
Yeah, I'm a big Chance fan myself, and he's kind of like came out of nowhere these past few years, and he's really taken off now. He does really great things for Chicago and the surrounding area as well. But like I say on Twitter all the time, Travis Scott is just like my guy, man. Like he's perfect for every situation that you experience or what you're going through, no matter what it is. So he's a guy he's like the top guy right now that I go to or listen to. But, without further ado, let's hop right into it. Everyone knows this is a big draft podcast, and we're going to talk mainly draft for the most part. So let's get right to it. Miles, who is your biggest riser right now among the 2018 draft?
Yeah, my biggest riser, I mean, I know it's been all over draft Twitter, but I think it has to be Baker Mayfield right now. I know before this season, a lot of folks were, kind of giving him that Johnny Manziel vibe. That kind of can he do it in the NFL? Does he have to be scheme? Does he have to be scheme friendly? Is there certain things that an offensive coordinator or a team has to do to kind of make him successful at the next level? And I think what he's really done is kind of help show that he might not need that. He might be able to work within a kind of like a Deshaun Watson, where he could work within a combination of both, where it's not just the run spread option. It's the ability to be able to work within the pocket, throw the ball deep, throw with anticipation and reading the defense. So I think Baker Mayfield's actually showing he's been doing a lot of that this season. And I think he's trying to work his way up into that, top 40 draft stock right now. And I think he's on his way.
He's a very, very interesting prospect. I've watched a couple games on him. I watched the Baylor game, and I actually went back and watched the Texas game from this past weekend. He's a very interesting study. And I was on Twitter earlier, and Scott McClellan, the former Redskins general manager, came out and said, he actually tweeted this, that he would take Baker Mayfield ahead of Josh Allen, Rosen, and every other quarterback as well. He named Lamar Jackson as well. So just hearing a guy with his expertise come out and say that, and he even went as far to mention that Mayfield actually reminds him of a younger Brett Favre, which is very interesting. And I actually like that comp because he's very fiery. He seems to be a leader. His teammates believe in him, and he's a guy that you seem to can build a team around or offense around just because he has that moxie and that swagger of a leader.
Yeah, he's not afraid of that limelight. He's not afraid of the spotlight. He's, it doesn't matter who they're playing. Nothing's too big for him, and I really like that.
Yeah, and that's something I definitely like about him, and it's something I always talk about with you guys as well. Confidence. That's the one thing that Baker Mayfield has, and he's not shy about that as well. The whole planting the flag fiasco at Ohio State just shows his confidence and how confident he is in his abilities. His stock is going to be very interesting, though, because he doesn't meet a lot of thresholds or measurables that a lot of scouts like to use. They kind of like to use that 6'1" to 6'2" threshold in the NFL. That's kind of like the magic number for quarterbacks, and any quarterback that's shorter than that is kind of pushing it for their limit. And we know Baker Mayfield is probably 6'1" at best. Maybe that's being nice. And that's why I really like the comp to Brett Favre, because he's that true natural gunslinger. He doesn't have a super, super strong arm like Brett Favre has, but he's not afraid to let the ball go. And he's not afraid to test tight windows. And that's what I really like about Mayfield.
Yeah, he's a true playmaker in that sense too. So I think, like you said, that it's gonna be tough for him in that draft process, because I think it's gonna be really important for him to test well in terms of on-field preparation. His pro day is gonna be really important, and little things like all the private workouts with teams are really important.
Definitely, and we know he has some off-the-field issues coming into this season as well. So just checking all the boxes in his interviews and at the combine as well is going to be really big for him. But he's definitely a prospect we're going to be debating a lot more. And he seems to be really at the top of the Heisman race right now. So his stock is going to be interesting. My biggest riser, I actually have two, but the first one I want to talk about is Anthony Miller, the wide receiver from Memphis. Wasn't really a big name coming into the year. Had really good stats coming into this year, but he doesn't get the notoriety that a lot of guys get. The Calvin Ridleys, the Cortland Suttons of the world. The big name receivers coming into the year. Deion Kane, also another name that was very notable at Clemson. But what you see with Anthony Miller, he's more of a shorter guy, around 6 foot, about 190 pounds, but he plays fearless. He has a really good catch radius, strong at the catch point, really good routes. And the game that really caught my eye was against UCLA. He was phenomenal in that game. They ended up winning that game. And what you see with Anthony Miller, he's not your typical, big body, big frame receiver. He's more in the Antonio Brown mode. He's small, but he plays really big. So Anthony Miller is definitely a guy that I like to refer to as a smaller receiver, but he plays really big. So another guy that I really want to highlight is Will Hernandez, which is the guard from UTEP.
That's your guy, I know.
Yeah, that's my guy right there, man. I love me some Will Hernandez. Watching offensive lineman film is not the most funnest thing to watch in the world. Catches your eye, and you just want to keep watching more and more of it. It's pretty fun, especially an offensive lineman catching your eye, and that's what Will Hernandez does. He's an offensive lineman that makes the game look easy, and he just overpowering guys, probably better in a man scheme as opposed to a zone scheme, because he's not a tremendously great athlete. He's a guy that relies on his power a lot. And, we know UTEP is struggling this season, but he's the one bright spot on that team. So keep Will Hernandez in mind, guard from UTEP. He's definitely going to be one of the top-ranked interior linemen, offensive linemen, going into the draft. Now, switching to the other side of things, Miles, who's your biggest faller of the year so far?
Yeah, I'd say I got a few guys that I think have kind of, you could say, disappointed, and some of it's not even through the fault of their own. Like a guy like Trey Flowers, like right now, it's not even his fault. He got hurt. He got hurt. The Washington tackle, Trey Adams, not Trey. Trey Flowers. He got hurt, towards ACL this last week, which is really tough because he's the guy I know. It's a really good, deep offensive tackle class. And, he got hurt, so that kind of hurts his stock a lot, which, depending on how the recovery process goes, I think it's going to be really important for him to hit some of those thresholds, when he's testing for teams and getting those medical checks. But that's just one of those, not off the field issues or anything like that, just one of those, injuries that kind of hurts a player's draft stock. But a guy on the field that has hurt himself, in my opinion, is Mike Weber, the Ohio State running back. Just it's unfortunate because he filled the shoes of Ezekiel Elliott last year. He looked really good. Thought he played really well throughout the season, and he kind of looked and had some of that similar build and play style to Ezekiel Elliott too. So you thought, heading into his second full season as a starter, he'd be a really good. He'd be one of those top guys in the Big Ten and in NCAA in terms of running backs. But he's disappointed so far this season. I know he's had a couple hamstring injuries and stuff like that, but even when he's played, he hasn't really gotten that many opportunities. They've been kind of rolling with some of the younger guys like KJ Dobbins and some of those guys, the young guns for Ohio State. So it's been kind of a disappointment for a guy like Mike Weber in that sense for me.
Yeah, and going back to Trey Adams, who is a really good player in my opinion, probably a better pass blocker than run blocker. The game that really stood out to me was last year against Alabama in the playoffs. He held his own against the Alabama front, and that's really the game that kind of put him on the map. And it's really unfortunate that he tore his ACL, but he already said that he's returning back for his senior year, which I think is probably best for him, just to show scouts that he can recover from that injury. And a lot of people had him, in that top 5 tier of tackles entering the draft. So maybe it was best for him to go back and just prove to scouts that he can be that first-round pick that he really thinks he should be.
I didn't even see that, so that's a really good point, because to me, in my opinion, I know it's a tough situation, one of those tough decisions to make as a player when you get hurt. But I don't know if he wants that extra year of wear and tear on his body before going to the league. That could be tough, but I mean, I hope the best for him.
Yeah, and it was an unfortunate situation, but it's a tough decision. He really is choosing, going back to school over making potential money to play the game that he loves. But, I'm sure he's talked to various people that's in his corner, and who knows? It might be the right decision. It might be the wrong decision. We won't know until next year when he does declare for the draft. But we wish Trey the best, and hopefully he has a speedy recovery. Moving on to my followers, Arden Key, defensive end, LSU, was a tremendous prospect heading into the year. Many people were saying he would end up being a Heisman Trophy candidate. That's how much hype he had coming into the year, which is crazy.
That's crazy. Yeah.
We haven't seen a defensive guy being mentioned as a Heisman candidate since Ndamukong Suh. So him getting that type of praise was phenomenal. But the biggest question with Key was his love for the game. And we saw him take a leave of absence from the team during the summer. And that raised a lot of scouts' eyebrows, because a lot of them asked, why was he leaving the team? Was his passion for the game still there, or was he just tanking it because he was ready to declare for the draft as opposed to playing another year at LSU? He missed the first game of the season with a shoulder injury, I believe it was. Now he's back. He's gained about 30 pounds. He's reportedly up to 275 pounds. He played at 245 pounds last year. But everyone's saying that he needed to add some weight to his frame because he looked very thin. He puts me in the mind of Leonard Floyd, the defensive end from he went to Georgia. Now he's playing for the Chicago Bears. I think he went 7th overall a couple of years ago. He definitely puts you
10th. Yep.
10th, excuse me. He definitely puts you in the mind and the body frame of Leonard Floyd. They both definitely have similar body frames and playing styles as well, but he hasn't lived up to the hype at this point, and I think adding that weight kind of negatively affected him, because he doesn't seem to have that same twitchiness and bend that he had last year. So Arden Key was definitely one of my biggest followers. Another one, probably the most highly debated prospect of the year so far, and that's Josh Allen from Wyoming, the quarterback. We've seen online the various reports about him, and
don't tell Matt Miller, man.
Matt Miller, my guy. I mean, there's a lot of – I've never seen a prospect have so many mixed opinions about him, whether it's his talent or just lack of traits. Everyone knows he has tremendous arm strength. He doesn't have a lot of help. Everybody sees that. But even though you don't have a lot of help, you shouldn't look nearly unbearable out there. And he just hasn't looked functionable in any phases of the game. He played better against Utah State last week, probably was his best game of the year. But just when he goes against Power 5 competition, it just doesn't look good and just doesn't look comfortable out there. The team that does draft Allen, they're betting more on his traits and his upside than what he's showing currently right now, because he's not worth the hype, in my opinion, right now. Just, everyone's saying he's the best prospect since Cam Newton, quarterback prospect since Cam Newton. I'm not seeing that right now. And he just has a long way to go as far as a prospect. What I really hope he does, there's a lot of reports saying he's on track to graduate early. I really hope he's able to play in the Senior Bowl, the Reese's Senior Bowl, in a couple months. Just seeing him around some of the best talent in the country, maybe we'll really get to see how he plays against better competition and also with better weapons around him. So if he's able to accept the Senior Bowl invitation and does graduate early, I would really like to see him play in the recent Senior Bowl.
Yeah, I think it'd be really important for him to make sure he solidifies himself if he wants to, be in the running for that, top overall, that first overall pick. I think with a guy like Josh Allen, it's always funny to me. People, there's some players who get the knock for being in a small school in a small conference, when they're going through the draft process. But then some guys like a Josh Allen who gets the excuses because he plays in the small school and he plays against smaller competition and he's playing poorly, but he gets the excuses that he plays at a small school, so it's all right. It's not a big deal, but he's got the traits. But in all reality, he should be dominating that talent, against that competition and, playing extremely well. In my opinion, it shouldn't matter all the time, everything he's got around him. You wouldn't expect him to have, an elite offensive line, a lot of, key big weapons at receiver and like that. So he should be able to kind of elevate everybody around him. In my opinion, I think that's kind of what I'd be looking for in a guy like him, because you saw that, a guy like a Carson Wentz, he did have a really good team, but he also, made a lot of really good plays and made some, really good big throws. And you're not seeing that from Josh Allen, at least not this year.
Yeah, I mean, he shows glimpses of it, but it's just not consistent. It's very sporadic in his play. And he did lose some guys. He lost some guys to the NFL. He lost Tanner Gentry and Brian Hill. But let's be honest, if you need those guys to have any type of success, you weren't very good to begin with, in my opinion. So moving on a more positive note, let's talk about our current draft crushes. So who is a couple guys you like right now as far as draft crushes that you're just gushing about?
Yeah, you know me. I'm one of those guys. I'm a receiver guy, so that's kind of definitely where I'm going to start. I think right now, I think you touched on Anthony Miller. You put me on him. That guy can play. But right now, one of my favorite draft crushes is Dante Pettis for Washington. That Washington team's, the last few years, they've had some, really good talent. But Dante Pettis, I think, you look at his film, you look at his tape, you watch him play, and he's not a twitchy, he's not all that much of a twitchy guy. He's not, a burner, nothing like that. But he just does the little things really well, and he has really good hands, runs really good routes. And I just think, for me, I think he could be a top, 50-ish pick. And you know exactly what you're going to get when you know exactly what you're going to get when you draft a guy like Dante Pettis. He's going to be he could step in day one and be your number 2 wide receiver, in my opinion. So I don't think he's a wide receiver 1 by any sense of the mean, but I think he could definitely be a high-end wide receiver 2 on a team who needs that, complementary pass catcher to go with, the stud receiver. I think a team, depending on how the Deshaun Jackson situation happens in Tampa Bay and all that, I know it's been up and down this season, but I think a guy like Dante Pettis could be a really good complement for a guy like Mike Evans. A team like Arizona could really use a guy like him who could, potentially take over for Larry Fitzgerald. But not to get too deep into the potential team fits or anything like that. But I really like Dante Pettis, though. I think, in my opinion, I think he was better than John Ross was last year. I think John Ross, he just showed big playability. He just outran a lot of people. But I thought it was Dante Pettis who was the more consistent player between the two. So I'm a big fan of his. And I think, like I said earlier, I think he could be a potential top 50 pick.
And I'm right with you. I'm a big Dante Pettis fan, and I think you're exactly right. He's a lot more polished receiver than what John Ross was coming out. He's not just running by people and being a flash in the pan type receiver, having big explosive plays down the field. He's a guy that can be a chain mover, I like to call him. You can go to him on third down, and whenever you need him to make a play, he's there for you. Has extremely strong hands, very, very good routes, and just a very reliable receiver. And, a team like the Chicago Bears could definitely use
that. That'd be a good one, too.
That would be a great fit for him, just to go and be a number 2 wide receiver. Let's say they do go and sign a big-time receiver like a Alshon Jeffrey or a Sammy Watkins in the offseason, who are both scheduled to be unrestricted free agents, and then they go and draft a guy like Dante Pettis to be that complimentary guy to them. I think would be a tremendous addition and asset to their team. So Dante Pettis is a guy I definitely like as well.
Yeah, for sure. And then another guy I really like, although he was suspended, for the first 3 games of the season, but I like Jordan Whitehead out of Pitt. He's a little smaller of a safety, but I think he could be one of those, roaming safeties who, whether you roll him down to play more of like a nickel role at the NFL level or a free safety, I think he has the ability to he plays bigger than his size. I think he's like 5'11", 200, not even 200 pounds, but he plays bigger than that. He's a heat-seeking missile. He's not afraid to make, go and fill gaps in the run game. And he has some he doesn't have the overall interception stats, but he's a playmaker. The guy makes plays. He's got a nose for the ball. He's always around the plays. I'm a big fan of his. I think besides the off the field issue that I'm still trying to figure out overall what happened. It just sounds like it was unspecified, violation he committed. I'm not really sure what happened, but there's that. And then just a couple, small things I think he could work on that could really help him. Sometimes he's got that Anderson-Dejo syndrome where he just kind of lowers his head and dives at people. And I think that could really hurt him at the next level where, guys just, you can't just do that. You got to be able to wrap guys up. You got to, play with a little bit more control, which I think if he can start doing that, I think he could be a really good prospect. I'm a big fan. I think he could be a top 80 pick, maybe. He might even go a little higher than that, depending on how his off the field checks out. But he could be in that 80 to top 100, picks. And being a little undersized could kind of hurt him. But like I said before, I think he could potentially step into a nickel role too. So I like him a lot.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. And, I mean, we know Derwin James and Minkah Fitzpatrick are probably that tier 1 of safeties. Yeah. He's probably in that tier 2 with Marcus Allen from Penn State, who's another great player as well. And I'm a big fan of Jordan Whitehead as well. The one thing I do love about him is that he can play both safety spots. He can play strong safety or he can play on the roof of a defense and roam the back end. He puts you in the mind of Carl Joseph from the Raiders.
That's a really good comp.
A smaller guy. Can come down and hit you and run support, but can also roam the back end and be like a Earl Thomas-like safety as well and just erase some mistakes on the back end if your cornerbacks get beat and he's just roaming over the top and can pat and deflect the ball down or even pick it from time to time. So Whitehead is definitely a guy to keep in mind as we get closer to the draft. Off the field issues might come up, but we still haven't heard exactly why he was suspended those first 3 games. Like you said, we don't know if it was a team deal or off the field incident. We really haven't heard anything. Maybe it'll come out as we get closer to the draft, and maybe it will never come out. We don't know, but Whitehead stock will definitely be interesting to watch.
And the guy, real quick, just kind of got to throw a Vikings plug in there. I think everybody's talked about, replacing Anderson-Dejo, which I'm here or there about it, but I think he could be one of those guys that could potentially fill that, spot next to Harrison Smith if that's what the Vikings wanted to do on day 2 of the draft.
Definitely considering, Zimmer asked his safeties to be able to play on the roof of the defense. Yep.
And interchangeable too, so for sure.
Versatility. Definitely have to be versatile in a Zimmer type scheme. But moving on, I want to talk about my draft crush, a name that we're definitely have heard a lot of to this point, and that's Quentin Nelson, the guard from Notre Dame. Seems to be a big favorite on Twitter throughout every team that needs offensive line help. Probably the best interior lineman we've seen in a while. Probably the best one since Zach Martin. And that's my exact comp for him. Just a bully in everything he does. And that's what you want to see out of young offensive lineman. The one thing you can't teach an offensive lineman is physicality. And he has that mean streak and that nastiness that you just love to see. But he's not just a big, nasty guy. He's a guy that can move as well. And, being 6'5", 330 pounds, being able to move like he does, in between the box, out on the perimeter when they pull him, even from time to time, he's just a really, really good prospect. And I know it's really early to talk about when guys will be picked, but it wouldn't shock me if he goes in the top 10 of the draft.
Yeah, definitely.
I think he's that special. I think he's a really good fit on a lot of teams. Cincinnati Bengals make a ton of sense just because they lost Zeitler to the Browns last year, and they're really struggling on the interior. So the Cincinnati Bengals make a lot of sense for him. And there's a lot of other teams as well that will make a lot of sense for him. But I think Quentin Nelson is just a tremendous prospect, and he's probably one of the best interior offensive lineman prospects we've seen probably in the last 2 to 3 years. Another guy I love, Jair Alexander, the corner from Louisville.
I knew that one was coming.
You knew it was coming. That's my guy right there. He's been banged up a little bit this year, battling a knee injury.
Playing on one leg.
Yeah, he is trying to fight. He tried to fight through against NC State a couple weeks ago. Tried to fight through it against Boston College, but he still doesn't look healthy. And, being that it is a knee issue, it might come up, or it probably will come up during the combine just because he hasn't played a lot this year. But when he's out there, he is an instant impact player. And the thing I love about Alexander is he's not just a cornerback. He's a return specialist as well. He's an All-American at both positions. So he provides tremendous value, not only on defense, but he's versatile as well in the return game, being that he was an All-American kick returner as well as an All-American corner. So he provides a lot of value in a lot of different phases of the game. Now moving on. Yeah, he's a really good player. Moving on, I want to get to some Twitter follower Q&A. We got a lot of different responses and a lot of questions, but unfortunately, we're only able to get to a couple. But it's something that we're going to do on every single podcast just because we want to keep our fans involved. And being that we're a new podcast, we want to make sure we get our followers involved as well. But first and foremost, we want to thank each and every one of you guys that sent a question. If you don't get your question answered this episode, keep sending your questions in. We'll definitely try our best to get to them eventually. So the first question is from Kyle Slabby at the Big Herman.
I love that name.
So I love it. So he asked, just in general, can you guys give us an idea of your scouting process? What do you look for in certain position groups and various other positions? I'll let you go first, Miles.
Yeah, I'm still working on in terms of the defensive side of the ball, but I'm definitely more of a offensive minded kind of guy. That's, I played offense, I played receiver, so that's definitely a little more of a niche for me. But I like to go through the process. I like to kind of, for each prospect, depending on position, I like to go through and I like to see the play first, and then narrow it down by the position. Whoever I'm looking at, I like to watch the play as it happens, and I like to focus in on that specific player that I'm watching, and kind of look at it as a whole scheme instead of just as and then dive deeper into more of the overall specific players' responsibilities and how they perform at it. I like it on the offensive side of the ball specifically. I really like to understand what everybody's doing, because when you play, it doesn't even matter what position you play. If you have an understanding of what everybody else around you is responsible for and what their role and their overall responsibilities are for that specific play and that specific scheme and formation, you're going to understand overall what the whole offense as a whole. And I think trying to do that, and when you're scouting, is really important. I think trying to find those, then you kind of can dive deeper into the traits. You can dive deeper into tendencies and stuff once you kind of understand a little bit of what that scheme might be for that offense and what that player's role might be. So there's a lot that goes into it. I'm probably not even doing that good of a job explaining it, but just overall, I like to just kind of understand the whole scheme and then dive into each specific player from that said scheme that I'm looking at. So
yeah, and it's definitely something that's very hard to explain because it's more of a natural feel, especially depending on certain positions. Obviously, you're not going to look for the same traits in a defensive lineman that you're looking for in a receiver. But just talking on the subject of a receiver, there's certain traits you look for, hands, routes, releases off the line of scrimmage. And, defensive linemen, maybe you're looking for hand usage, their motor, and just how they go about, their attitude on various different plays. So it's very hard to explain, but there's certain traits that you look for depending on the position. And what I like to tell everybody is that's new in the scouting industry or, just getting started on scouting various prospects, write down traits that you like to see in a certain prospect and just go from there. So it's definitely something that's hard to explain, and everybody has their different technique for scouting various positions. Yeah,
like you said, we've talked about a lot of the times is like for the quarterback position, that's the hardest one, obviously, probably to scout. But, you're looking for throwing on anticipation, accuracy, movement in the pocket, reading a defense, and then going through progressions, a lot of that kind of stuff. So there's just a lot that goes into it, but it's so fun. It's so fun though, just to sit back and watch and like reevaluate players and watch that tape. I like to go back and watch games from last year, and whether it's the NFL or college, and watch games from a couple years ago, just to kind of watch. When you're scouting a specific prospect, watching them progress year in and year out, from their freshman or sophomore years to their juniors and senior seasons, and watching, does that tendency change? Does that, the things that they excel at, do they get better at? Are they continue to work on that, those skills, and the things they struggle in, are they getting better at? Is that something that they notice that you're noticing in terms of their tape? So a lot of stuff like that too.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because it's really fun seeing prospects get better or even decline over time,
right.
And that's what makes the scouting process fun. And I always like to reference quarterbacks, because the bigger the sample size, the better, in my opinion. And that was the biggest issue or debate with Mitchell Trubisky last year, the quarterback from North Carolina that's currently starting for the Chicago Bears. But the biggest issue with Trubisky was the small sample size, and we really didn't get to see him correct those mistakes over time, because he only started in 13 games at Carolina. So the bigger the sample size, the better, in my opinion, depending on prospects. So moving on to the next question from Dylan Schnabel. Twitter @is Schnabel Dylan. Very creative. Which prospect could experience a tumble during the draft?
Ooh, I'll let you take this one first.
This is a very tough question for me, just because we don't know the actual projection range for, prospects right now. It's still very early. It's really the middle of the season. Nobody really knows where everyone is projected right now. Obviously, the big names we know are going to go top 10, the Saquon Barkleys and Sam Darnolds of the world. We know those guys are going to really go early in the draft, but I just have this funny feeling. I don't know why. I just want to say Derwin James. I don't know what it is. Maybe people will start talking about the knee again, even though he's proved to be healthy this year. But I just have a funny feeling that he's going to take a tumble, probably into the middle of the first round, in that 15 to 18 range. And everyone knows that teams shy away from taking safeties high. We saw it with Malik Hooker last year, who's turned out to be a really good player. Even though Jamal Adams went 6 overall, a lot of people were questioning it at the time, just because safeties traditionally don't really go in the top 10. So, I mean, it's kind of an unexplainable feeling why I think it's going to happen. I think Derwin James is a tremendous player, but sometimes, or a lot of times, NFL scouts really overthink prospects, and I think they're going to do that with Derwin James, simply because he's not a free safety. Let's just be honest. I think he's more of a strong safety. The closer to the box he is, the better. He's more of your traditional hybrid strong safety linebacker player, and I just think some teams are going to overlook him just because of that. He doesn't provide that versatility, being able to be on the roof of a defense at safety.
Yeah, that's a good one. I have a hard time understanding that one, but it's like you said, it's one of those feelings. You just had that feeling that it could be him. A guy for me, I think I don't think it comes as too much of a surprise, but I think a guy like Mason Rudolph. I think right now, I think he's kind of in that. He's trying to work his way up to the first, second round, but I could really see him tumbling and being more of like a mid to late day 3 guy that that kind of has some of that Brad Kaya to him that I think the outside fans and some scouts and stuff like that, they might like him that you're hearing, but overall I think maybe teams overall aren't liking what they're seeing, and kind of like Brad Kaya, because I know this time last year we were talking about Brad Kaya as a potential first or second round pick, and he just got cut by the Panthers. So I think a guy like Mason Rudolph could be one of those guys who could just who could tumble all the way down. There's always a quarterback in almost every draft that you see that gets some decent hype that ends up falling completely out, whether it's late day 3 or even as an undrafted free agent.
Yeah, and I've been very vocal about my stance on Mason Rudolph, just because he's going to be a very highly debated quarterback, and it just depends on the type of quarterback that you like. And Mason Rudolph is definitely a different type of quarterback, and what I mean by that is he's in one of the air raid system, and it goes back to the Derek Carr debate when he was at Fresno State. Being in that air raid system, there's a lot of half-field reads, sometimes even one progression reads that they're not even going through. And, you know, if he doesn't, or if he, a lot of times he gets fixated on that one route. And if that one route is not there, he seems to be really confused. And that's what you saw a lot of times with Derek Carr at Fresno State. And it's going to be a very, very highly debated prospect in Mason Rudolph. So his stock is definitely going to be interesting, but he's a guy I think that can go on day one or even early day two, just because we know the NFL values traits over production. Right, which is fine, especially with quarterbacks. And we've seen a lot of quarterbacks be overvalued because they have traits over that production they've shown on film.
Yeah, he's just one of those guys that I could also see just, you know, teams not liking when he's got, you know, between the ears. You never know.
Definitely. So we have a very interesting question for our final question from our good friend, Jason Brown, at Brown Jason. Very famous on Twitter. Very, very famous on Twitter. Good friend of ours over at Climbing the Pocket. So, some film came out from Yinka today. We saw him throwing some touchdowns. Miles, you witnessed it firsthand. So, Jason's question was, which NFL team would be the best fit for Saxy Prince?
Oh, man. I love it. That's awesome. Whew. I mean, he was rocking the two gloves, but I don't think Minnesota would be a good fit for him. I think the fans would tear him to pieces. I think maybe he could fit in more of a spread style offense, maybe like a Tennessee Titans. Maybe he could kind of I can't even say it seriously. Maybe he could try to resemble kind of what Marcus Mariota was doing in Tennessee.
See,
I don't know.
See, I think Yinka has to go to a team that is revolved around the running back, just because
that's him.
I don't think the arm talent is there with Yinka right now.
No.
And so that's why I think Jacksonville will be a great situation for Yinka. Just ride the back of Leonard Fournette and you know, I don't want Yinka throwing the ball more than 20 times a game.
20, 10.
Yeah. So
yeah, I think just ride Fournette.
The Blake Bortles effect all over with Yinka. just keep it out of his hands. Play strong defense and run the ball.
Oh, that's perfect.
That should be the recipe for success.
Yep.
With Yinka. Yeah. But we'll go ahead and wrap that up as far as the Q&A with our Twitter followers. Once again, we want to thank everyone for sending in your questions. And if we didn't get to your question this week, we'll try our best to get to it next week. Thank y'all for sending questions. Now, you know, me and Miles made a little Abby bet. Doing game picks, we're going to keep an overall record all the way through the national championship game. Whoever has the best record after the national championship game will get to choose the Abby of the person that they have to keep for a week.
Oh, man.
So we're going to pick 4 games this week. I added an extra one in there I didn't tell you about.
No, you didn't.
It's a wild card game. All right. So the first game we'll pick is between Notre Dame and USC. They're giving USC 3.5 points. Who you got?
I'm going to go USC.
It's a good pick. I like Sam Darnold over the Trojans.
That's a good rivalry.
It is.
You never know.
Definitely. USC is currently ranked 13th in the country, and Notre Dame is 11th. So it's definitely going to be a good game. Next game, we got Oklahoma State and Texas. Texas is getting 7.5 points. Who you got?
Ooh. I know you're going to go Texas. I'm going to go Oklahoma State.
How'd you know I was going to go Texas?
Because I know you. I think you like what they got going. So yeah, I think they're getting better. I think that they're a decent team this year.
They are. Tom Herman's trying his best to get that thing turned around. Kind of performing below expectations right now, but I mean, we all know Texas hasn't been Texas the past few years, and he definitely has his work cut out for him. But I'm going to go with Texas. I want them to get the upset, and I think they're going to do it. Next game is kind of tricky just because of the point spread. We have Alabama and Tennessee. Tennessee is getting 35 points.
They're kidding. I mean, it's an SEC game. I mean, yeah. I mean, obviously, I'm gonna pick Alabama, but the points is the part
it's a lot of points
that's killing me. 35.
I mean, they put 66 on Ole Miss, and they just blew out Arkansas last week.
I was about to say, like, they could just win 70-7.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna go Alabama with the. I'm gonna have them taking the over on the 35 too.
I'm with you. I got Alabama. I've learned to never bet against Nick Saban.
It's gonna be 14-3.
Yeah. Now for the game I added.
Yeah.
This is even. So nobody gets any points.
Okay.
Louisville and Florida State.
Oh, I'm going Louisville.
Going Louisville. Huh?
They don't. DeAndre Francois is out. I don't think Florida State's the same. They haven't really recovered since then either. So I think what did they get their first win last week?
Yeah. Yeah, they did.
I'm gonna go Louisville. I wish it was still Francois, but I'm gonna go Louisville.
You know, in Lamar Jackson we trust, but I just can't go against my nose.
I knew it.
I just can't go against my nose. I love Lamar Jackson. I'm a big Lamar Jackson fan. I like what Jimbo's doing with James Blackman, freshman quarterback. Defense is playing well. So I think they're going to get the upset. I'm going to go with Florida State. I trust my nose. I trust my nose to shut down Lamar Jackson.
What kind of score you see that being?
I'm going to go Florida State 31, Louisville 28.
You got 31 from – okay. All right. Derwin James spying Lamar Jackson or what?
Yeah. He has his struggles against athletic defenses. Clemson, LSU, he's had his struggles against athletic defenses. So I think Florida State has a good shot at beating Louisville.
Yeah, that's gonna be the big one though, because when Louisville wins, I got you next week.
Yeah, you do. So for everyone keeping a tally at home, make sure you write those picks down. We don't want a situation where, Miles is calling tails and the referee says heads. He tries to backtrack on those picks. But anyway, Miles, any upcoming projects or articles you're working on?
Yeah, I'm working on an article right now that'll drop end of the week. I want to highlight 3 prospects I like that fit kind of like what the Minnesota Vikings could potentially see or need in the 2018 draft. So
we'll definitely be looking forward to that. And for myself, I have my first round mock draft dropping on Friday. So I'm excited about that. People really don't understand how hard it is to do mock drafts and how stressful they are. And God bless anybody that does full 7-round mock drafts, because I probably would rip all my hair out trying to do all that. So.
Is this a full 7 for all teams or the Vikings?
No, it's a full first round for every team.
First round, okay.
First round. Yep, full first round for every team. And I feel good about it. Can't wait for everybody to read it. And all those articles will be on climbingthepocket.com. Make sure y'all go check those out. But that's a wrap for the first episode. Thank you guys for listening and everybody that stayed the entire show. Like we said, this will be released every Thursday, Climbing the Big Board podcast. We're really excited about this and where this is going to take off. Miles, you got any final thoughts or, shout outs for the people?
Man, I'm excited to keep going. I love this is my favorites to talk about, to watch, to study. So I'm excited.
Definitely. We're definitely excited about that and where this is going to go going forward. Once again, thank you guys for listening. And we're looking forward to episode 2 already. Already thinking of ideas of what we can get going. And the future of this podcast is definitely looking bright. So thank you guys for listening once again, and hopefully see you next week.